Welcome to the December the 10th, 1991 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of Grand Prairie, Texas, and some of those people that have caused this history to happen. And today we're doing our history tape number 161. And this is a segment that's very important to us because we have a very special young man on the set with us today, Dr. Reg McDaniel from the DFW Medical Center and other very important enterprises, as he's an entrepreneur in the medical field. We want to welcome you to the show today, Dr. Reg McDaniel.
Thank you, Ruthie.
Wonderful. And before we begin interviewing you particularly with some of the nuts and bolts of the things you do, we'd like for you to look out into your camera, and we'd like for you to establish your genealogy. Tell us a little bit about where you were born, give your parents' name, anything you'd like to have about your past history, sir.
I was born on July the 16th, 1936 at Palmer, Texas, about 35 miles southeast of here. So I haven't gone very far in this world. And the first time I was in Grand Prairie was around 1940, 1941. I remember that my aunt was working in one of the stores just east of the movie downtown, and LTV and Chance Vault had moved here, and she was in the loudest room I'd ever heard. They were riveting horizontal stabilizers on the old Gulf, I think it was called Corsair, but it had gull wings on it for World War II.
Would you give us her name?
It was Vela Vaughn. Vela Vaughn.
Vela Vaughn, all right, but now you failed to give us your parents' name. Would you give us your mother and father's name and your mother's maiden name too, please?
Well, my mother was Christine Byers, and she married Harley Ross McDaniel out of the Marlin Lot area down below Waco. And I was born in the Methodist Parsonage in Palmer. It's still there, incidentally.
All right, and tell us a little bit about your parents. What did your dad do for a living, and do you have any brothers or sisters?
My father was a Methodist minister, and he went into World War II as a chaplain and did not come back. And I had a brother, Ross, who's graduating the University of Texas down in Austin. And he's there, and then my mother remarried when I was about 12 years old, and I had 3 half-brothers and 2 half-sisters, and they live around the Whitney area, except as kids get older and marry, they move, and I don't know where all of them are right now. I have one brother still down there. Lives at Prairie, Texas, which incidentally is where Dr. Cupp, who used to be in Grand Prairie, went to practice the first time after he got out of medical school, and it's hard to believe the little small towns that doctors used to be in all over the state.
And is your mother still living?
No, she died about 15 years ago.
All right. So that leaves you almost the head of the family now. And tell me this, Reg McDaniel, would you establish your personal life? Give us your wife's name, and if you have any children, establish that for us.
My wife is Cindrette Ricker McDaniel. And when I married her, her husband had died at a very young age and left her with a small boy and daughter, and I adopted them, and it's Paige and John. Paige works in the office and scheduling of the drug czar in Washington. We're very proud of her. She went to the Department of Education and moved over to the drug czar. And then John works in security for a company in Dallas. And then by a previous marriage, I have 3 sons, and 2 of them live here in Grand Prairie. One of them works at American Airlines in telemarketing, and the other one may be starting to work for the city in the next week in the car maintenance pool. And then I have a son, Rex, who has just finished his first semester in medical school up in Kansas City.
That's wonderful. Now we must get back to Palmer, Texas, where Reg McDaniel was born. Did you go to school in the Palmer, Texas area, or did you move out of that area? Where did you go to elementary and junior high and etc.?
Well, in those days, Methodist ministers were really known for the days of the horseback riders, circuit riders, and my father moved about every year or two. And eventually, we went from Palmer to Blooming Grove to Red Oak, Old Villa, Milford, and Hillsboro, and that's where he went in the service. And I started elementary school at Harris Elementary in Hillsboro, and then the 5th grade I when my mother married as a widow, moved to Abbott, Texas, and from the 5th grade through graduation, I was at Abbott, Texas.
All right. And in all of these transitions, moving from school and finally ending up at Abbott, Texas, was there anyone special, Dr. Reg McDaniel, that really inspired you, that said, Reg, you can be a go-getter if you'll just get with it, or encouraged you in a special way? Do you remember anyone like that?
Oh, there were several.
Would you like to name drop?
Yes, there was Dr. Ben Smith, who my father seemed to respect so greatly, and he was a family practitioner in Hillsboro. And I can still remember how just turned on I was to go in his office, all those shiny things in the glass cases and all. And if you ever knew Dr. Stewart, that lived here in Grand Prairie for so long and started the hospital, he was a white-headed, large man that looked a great deal like Dr. Stewart, and one of those type of physicians that if God was going to make one this way you thought they ought to look, like Dr. Christian, as I always pictured in my mind on radio. He was that type person. He was so good to me, and he'd let me crawl up in his lap and turn on his dictaphone, and I could hear myself go back and forth. And he was the only person in town that had a dictaphone. And then probably out of everyone else, I remember my 5th and 6th grade teacher. She did it 2 years at Abbott, Mrs. L.C. McCamey, or known as Boots McCamey. And she really was a wonderful teacher. When I was on the State Board of Education, I wrote a thing about how I appreciated her. And I remember in particular, I had never heard the words geodesic. You know, these people that make maps and all. And I can particularly remember her going up and down the rows and saying, do you realize that outside of town here in Abbott, we have the master tower for all of Texas to make the maps, and the geodesics work there at night to measure the surfaces and all. And the reason at Abbott they put this master tower is it's the highest point between the Red River and the Gulf of Mexico. And then she would look at us and say, do you realize you're closer to God than anybody else in school, and He's watching you, and you ought to do your best?
Yes.
And
it worked, didn't it?
I hope so. And she was a teacher that touched you and encouraged you, and I have always felt like that she was kind of a surrogate mother, and I really, I think probably my appreciation for what I was given from someone who shared that in public schools probably influenced me to even consider being on the State Board of Education, and kind of a way of saying thank you to her.
Wonderful. All right, after Abbott, what happened to Dr. Reg McDaniel?
Southwestern University at Georgetown for 4 years, where my father had gone to school, and where my daughter Paige came for a few years later, and graduated with a double degree in chemistry and biology, and applied for medical school here in Dallas at Southwestern Medical School. Went 4 years there and worked in the pathology department to help put my way through school, and just never did leave.
And just stayed in pathology up until this very day, right?
Right. I did a year of residency at Parkland in the pathology department, which was jointly with the medical school, and did 2 years at Brooke Army Medical Center. Even did my military training in a medical unit there, and then came back, finished my residency at Parkland. And right in the middle of it, they had a problem come up in one of the hospitals here in Grand Prairie, and they sent us as a little task force out here to try to help straighten things out in February 1966, and I just never have left.
All right, you mentioned the military. Tell us about any military experience you had.
Well, I was a pathologist, so you don't shoot or get shot at.
Yes, but where were you stationed?
At San Antonio.
In San Antonio?
Did the training there, and we had veterinarians and dentists and doctors from all over the United States there, and they were getting assignments all over the world, and I bought a new car with the idea that I'd have to drive somewhere, and ended up going about 3 blocks from where I did my training for basic to go into the military, and really enjoyed San Antonio and loved Texas. And so I used to say, I was in the military, because everybody else was from other states, I had to have a visa to get across the state line.
That's wonderful. All right, now after the military and coming out on this sojourn when you were associated with Parkland to DFW. Was it called the DFW Medical Center then, or give us a little bit of history about that?
Well, actually, in 1966, we had 4 small hospitals in town. We had Great Southwest, and then we had Mid-Cities Osteopathic. We had the Miller Whitcomb on the south side of town, and then Plattner. And we were very fortunate that, and I'm very proud to have been a part of it. In 1972, I drafted a petition to the City Council and got 25 physician signatures. It was taken to the City Council to form a unified nonprofit community hospital. And they started in '72, and it's probably the biggest single thing that the citizens of Grand Prairie ever got together to do. I know at the time there were pledges made from people in the community, and it was the most money ever raised for anything, and I think probably at that time there had never been so many people working for something for the community. And they centered it at Mid-Cities Osteopathic Hospital because it had the best structure and free land, not free land, but open land around it. And in 1975, it was opened as Grand Prairie Community Hospital, and eventually the name was changed to Dallas-Fort Worth Medical Center.
Okay. And how are you associated with that hospital at this time?
Well, I'm like the other physicians in the community, except that I have a contract, and the board and the administration has me to act as the chief of pathology, and that has 2 areas, the laboratory and blood bank, as well as all the tissues and pap smears and examination of people that die and you want to know why they died. I do that too. Kind of like you've seen on TV. I'm blocking on the name of the TV pathologist that people associate it with. We do not do that much of it, but most of our work is done on surgical tissues, pap smears, and then blood that's drawn in the hospital. And I'm responsible for the college-trained people that do the analysis in the hospital.
Mentioning the blood, one minute you get a commercial here on blood. Look right out into your camera and do that.
Okay, Ruthie promised me this. We've had a problem for years in Grand Prairie that Carter Blood Center in Fort Worth goes all over North Texas trying to find blood for our needs, and they keep pushing us to do a better job here in Grand Prairie, and we've gone from replacing about 1 in 10 units that we use to about half of the units. But we have an action packet now that if your church or your civic group or business or any group that want to set up a blood bank and do donations, we can have a mobile bank come to you, and if you'll just write us at the hospital, we'll send you this packet of how to organize a blood group for your group, and how you can, every week on Wednesdays from 1 to 6 o'clock, we have Carter Blood Center come and you can give blood donations here, and I urge you to help us take care of our needs because they're your needs. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, now you've gotten that commercial in. Now let's get to something a little bit more personal. You helped to establish the hospital, made a pitch before the City Council. You've been responsible for a lot of other things here in Grand Prairie. To the students, you've been responsible in the patriotic field. When you were serving on the State Board of Education, you work in Rotary consistently. And just I believe last Saturday night, you were dubbed the Physician of the Year by the DFW Medical Center, and at the Mistletoe Ball, you were the honoree. And I'd like you to speak to all of that good stuff, would you?
Well, it's rather humbling. I don't know whether any of us deserve to ever be called citizen or physician or anything of the year, because there's so much more that needs to be done and so much more that each one of us could do. And as we look out there at people, we say, what are you going to do next year? Right. So, because it takes all of us working together, and as I was trying to point out when the hospital, even though I just got the petition together, it took everyone in town working together to make this hospital a reality. And some of the things that they cited in '75 when we opened, I was asked to be Director of Medical Education at the hospital. And for 5 years I served in that role. We train junior and senior medical students that rotate in from Fort Worth, from the State School of Osteopathic Medicine there. We also have interns and residents. Then we expanded and we started a community health series, and we did over 50 seminars on many different subjects, as well as training hundreds of people how to do CPR. Every business, every home, every ball field should have people there that know how to establish an airway and support a person until the mobile ambulance system gets there. And we have an EMS medical system in Grand Prairie now. It means Emergency Mobile Health Service. It replaced the old ambulances that were used. Now it's like a portable emergency room. And during this same period, we established a state-accredited emergency medical technician and emergency care attendant school. We trained over 200 individuals and even helped in the fire department teach them how to respond to people. And out of that became what we have now. I think it's about 5 mobile units staged over the community. They have trained people on them. You have telemetry that comes into the hospital, and I was able during that period of time to encourage the board and get them to hire full-time specialist emergency room physicians. And you're not aware of it, but there's not a month that goes by that someone their life is literally saved or extended because of what came out of this period of developing a better system. And I can't take the credit for all that at all, and don't plan to. Southland Funeral Home had been doing it for years with vans, and they came to me, Duke Burge Jr., and says, will you help us? And so out of that, a lot of things were done of working together, which is what it always takes to get something done in a community. And I'm very proud of the part I was able to play in that, and know that on a daily basis people in Grand Prairie are better off because we have it. You have now taxis that go to it, and just as you would want a fire department in case your house caught on fire to be able to respond, we've got people responding system to help preserve life. And
all right, in the education field, I believe you also participate in Career Day. Would you expand on that a little?
Well, we've had for years health, education, occupation students that come in very early in the morning and before they go to school, and they learn to draw blood and get their hands, so to speak, into what the environment is in the hospital. And out of this, we've had people go to college and become lab techs, or even decide to go to medical school. And it becomes kind of a explorer scout type opportunity for young people. And we've just had dozens over the years that find out in all of professions and businesses should have something going with the school to let young people realize that there are opportunities right here that they can find out that that's something they like and they enjoy and get fulfillment out of and prepare to do those things. And so we've been able to do that with the school extensively.
I see you at Rotary consistently when I'm invited as a guest to Rotary. Tell me about your Rotary life. I know that you have a magnificent voice and you're a member of the Rotary Chorus. What else are you interested in at Rotary?
Well, Rotary, his motto is service above self, and the Rotarians in Grand Prairie, not particularly in the name of Rotary, participate in many different things to try to make it a better place to live, and higher ethics and responsibility in their business dealings to tell the truth, to make decisions that are beneficial for all people. And not only have I been a member of the Rotary Chorus, but we have programs, and I've been program chairman for the Rotary to make people aware of what's happening in the community, in the council of government zone of the Metroplex and the state and nationally. And then annually we have international meetings of goodwill between nations and Rotarians from other nations. And we also send and contribute to sending students from the community to other countries, and for those in turn from other countries, we have students in here. Last year we had one from Germany that was in the high school, ended up being one of the fastest track stars we've had in ages.
Yes.
Matthias, I believe his name was, a young West German student. So there's just no end of things that Rotary can do. I would like to see us do more in regard to elderly people. They seem to, in the nursing homes and retirement homes, to be forgotten. Maybe it's a lot of guilt because with inflation and all, and so many citizens saying, gimme, 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 and these poor elderly people that have saved and worked hard all their life, when they were young, $1 would buy 5 loaves of bread or 10 loaves of bread, and now you can't get a loaf of bread for $1, and it's really hard on them. And I think that in our communities, that all civic organizations should do more to help and make life better for those that are retired, and that's just an area of Rotary interest for me.
Several years ago, the Quality of Life Foundation here in Grand Prairie, Texas, you approached them about a very special patriotic need that we had, and you helped in that. I would like for you to tell us a little bit about that program.
When I was on the State Board of Education, there, as you're very well aware of, there's been a lot of negative commentary, books written and all about the state of our education program, and a classroom teacher down in Pasadena, Texas was asked by his superintendent 15 years ago to develop a program to make a more positive relationship with the community and the businesses and all. He called it the Texas Free Enterprise Project. And it was run by Warren Adams, and I became aware of him when I was on the state board and went to several of their programs. And it was a very positive message about individual responsibility and in school and in education, and it fired up teachers and it fired up administrators, and it put a fire under students, that making them aware of all the good things and opportunities that are available in this country. My associate, Dr. Krishnan, is from India, and one of the things she frequently will say something about what a land of opportunity this is. And you'd be surprised the number of students that have all these opportunities and don't realize it, and they're sitting saying, having a pity party, oh, woe is me, and they've got all these things that are wrong in their family or in the world and all, and they're letting life slip by when they can be preparing for what type of life the rest of their life can be. How you do in school determines what car you're going to drive and what kind of clothes your children will wear, and you cast your life by how you take care of the educational opportunities, because we do have a meritocracy in this country, and you do have to work hard and you do have to have good luck, but you can have all kind of good luck come your way, and if you're not prepared to take advantage of it, you're in trouble. And this whole program went into over 100 high schools, and just dynamite. I have stacks in my files of positive responses from students. One that comes to mind is about a little girl in Spring Branch, Houston, that came up after one of these programs, and her superintendent was standing there, and she told one of the participants, said, my mother and father are separated. I've been on dope. I've lost my job at Dairy Queen. I'm flunking all my courses, and I had saved up enough drugs for my mother's thing that I was going to commit suicide this weekend because I didn't see any reason to go on. But says, after this program, I think I can make it, and that life's got something to offer, and I'm so lucky to be an American and a Texan and to be in school and have all these opportunities. Those type of stories have been repeated and maybe less dramatic, but to be able to help foster that, and certainly the day that we did it here, and I hope we can do it again, maybe it will touch some young person who's very distressed and who's about ready to throw in the towel and give up.
All right.
They don't hear enough positive things.
That's right. We need all of that positive pat on the back, don't we?
Right.
Now, you were prepared to come before this because you had all of this research, and I've never seen as many display boards in the whole world. Would you tell us, just in about 3 minutes, outside of your pathology, or maybe in conjunction with that, you're working on the AIDS situation, many other things, so give us a real short recap on that, and then we'll get them to pan some of these wonderful displays you brought with you, Dr. McDaniel.
Well, let me tell you something positive about Grand Prairie.
All right.
1981, after I had finished being Director of Medical Education, I decided that we ought to do some research for medical research, and one of the reasons is that Most people are aware that more hospitals have closed in Texas in the last 10 years than any other place in the country, and they say even more hospitals will close in the next 10 years. This is due to economic reality. And our hospital was a young hospital. It takes about 25 to 50 years for a hospital to make its name and respect and confidence and build that with the people that are around it. And here in Grand Prairie, no more than about 25% of the people use our hospital or use a local physician, and we're a young hospital. And I decided one way to do something to grasp credibility and respect early was to do medical research. And started on it, and Bill McAnally, who's a longtime resident of Grand Prairie and lives on the south side of town, who's a research pharmacologist, came to me, and with him he brought a research veterinarian that lives down on Chalk, south of I-20, by the name of Bob Carpenter. He's a research veterinarian. And they asked me to work with them, and they had a new drug, and it's called Ace Mannin. And I think, conservatively, it's going to be one of the most important drugs in the history of medicine. And through the work of a veterinarian, a research PhD pharmacologist, and a physician here at the hospital, you see three posters here. These are scientific posters that are presented at national and international. We've been to Stockholm, we've been to London, we've been to Jerusalem, we've been all over the United States with these. We've done over 35 of these on different research projects. But the drug Ace Mannin turns on the defense system of the body. And when it turns on the defense system, if you think about it, you don't sit around and think about healing a wound or getting well from the flu and all. Your body does it. This is a molecule that turns on the natural physiology to heal the body regardless of what's wrong. And we have treated over 41 AIDS patients and reported on them, and now our work that has been very encouraging has been verified in Belgium, and a major study coming right out of the pilot work done here in Grand Prairie is being done with the Canadian government by Carrington Laboratories that Dr. McAnally works for. In addition, down at Texas A&M, they have been working with it, and they find it's antiviral against many viruses I've never heard of in animals, and they have shown that it makes vaccines work better. Vaccines that wouldn't even work or be effective, you combine it with this and they work. It's beneficial for the common cold and prevent the flu. And now we're seeing it's a benefit in animals with tumors and leukemia. And as patients have heard about this, they've combined it with their regular therapy, and it's even showing promise for use in malignancies in human beings.
Dr. McDaniel, that's almost a miracle statement, and you're a miracle man to not be a resident of Grand Prairie, Texas, to have made so many contributions to the history of the things that are going on in our city. We want to really thank you for coming to be with us today and sharing some of your inner thoughts and even some of your commercials about Blood for the Hospital, for singling out the DFW Medical Center as a special place. And we really appreciate, and we don't always tell you how much we think of the things that you do, and we appreciate having you on the show today.
Well, thank you for letting me be here, and I am a Grand Prairian, long term.
Long time Grand Prairian.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.